5 seconds penalty.
No, it cannot be, Ricky. Do I deserve to be out of the points? No, tell them. It is unacceptable. They need to wait until the race is finished and discuss with me.
Where even do we start with this one? There was a huge catastrophe at that Australian Grand Prix. Yes, F1 and Liberty Media received the spectacle they desired, but at what price? It doesn't get any messier than 3 red flags and 8 DNFs. To make matters worse, they chose to punish a driver for an incident on a lap that F1 later claimed never occurred. And the grid has not received this consequence well. After all the poor judgments made during the race, the drivers are once again taking a stand against the FIA, with Carlos Sainz leading the charge after getting the controversial 5-second penalty. Fernando Alonso thought the penalty was too harsh, while Carlos Sainz was given the 5-second penalty that bothered him because the FIA stewards determined he had enough time to avoid contacting Alonso. Sainz's 5-second penalty, which he described as the most unjust he had ever seen, caused him to drop from 4th to 12th in a chaotic Melbourne race that concluded under a safety car. After the last standing restart, which featured multiple significant mistakes and gave drivers one more opportunity to attack on cold tires with only 2 laps remaining, the Ferrari driver sent Alonso spinning. When the red flag was instantly raised and the positions were reset for the final restart, which ended the race behind the safety car, it appeared that Alonso had lost his chance of a podium finish. However, the Aston Martin driver swiftly recaptured the place. Despite Alonso's fortunate escape, the stewards still penalized Sainz for the incident. They discovered that despite Alonso having a significantly lead going into the first bend, Sainz put too much speed in the turn and drove into Alonso as they were coming out. This occurred on the first lap of the restart, and the stewards noted that they typically take a more lenient view of incidents. However, in this particular case, notwithstanding the fact that it was the equivalent of a first lap incident, we considered that there was sufficient gap for car 55 to take steps to avoid the collision and failed to do so, they said. The Spaniard was penalized for his involvement in the chaos of the essentially pointless late race red flag restart, in which he hit Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin's right rear coming out of turn 1. This happened after Sainz, who had just fought off Pierre Gasly under braking, ended up spinning the Aston Martin, with Alonso making minimal contact with the barriers. The racing order was essentially restored to as it was before the restart when more collisions led to the race being red flagged before leader Max Verstappen had even finished one sector, which meant Alonso's race was reset to before the restart. However, Sainz was swiftly given a 5-second penalty prior to the final rolling restart, which resulted in the race being entirely neutralized until the checkered flag. This was unfortunate given the race's circumstances because Sainz was dropped to 12th and last beyond the finish line. This wasn't something the Spaniard had expected. "No, it cannot be," he told race engineer Ricardo Adami after being told of the sanction. "Do I deserve to be out of the points? No, it's unacceptable. Tell them, it's unacceptable. They need to wait until the race is finished and discuss with me." When ordered to copy, he pleaded, "No, please, to wait and discuss with me. Clearly the penalty is not deserved, it is too severe." Speaking to media after the race, Sainz said, "I think it's the most unfair penalty I've seen in my life. So before talking to you I'm saying really bad stuff and bad words. I prefer to go back to the stewards, have a conversation with them and maybe I can come back and talk to the media because now I honestly cannot do it. It's too unfair and I don't feel well to speak." Similar to this, he told F1 TV that he was too angry, too disappointed to speak and that his goal was to get the penalty overturned. "I just needed to come to the TV pen because if I didn't come, they'd put me another penalty. Sorry, I prefer not to talk. I'll come back later after going to the stewards." Sainz wasn't the only one who believed the punishment was unfair, though. Since the accident was part of racing, Sainz was backed by Alonso after the race, who called the penalty too harsh. "Obviously, I didn't know who touched me in that moment, I just felt," Alonso said after the race. "In lap 1 of the first start, someone touched me in turn 3 and then in the last restart Carlos apparently touched me in turn 1. Probably only Jeddah had the normal start. In Bahrain also in turn 4 Lance touched me into turn 4 so, yeah, I'm very attractive out there. But our car is strong enough, so it doesn't matter if they keep touching us. Probably the penalty is too harsh because on lap 1 it is very difficult always to grip level is and I think we don't go intentionally into another car because we know that we risk also our car and our final position. So sometimes you ended up in places that you wish you were not there in that moment. And it's just part of racing. I didn't see the replay properly, but for me it feels too harsh." It seems that this season, things just keep getting worse for Sainz and Ferrari. However, the overall result of the race was a complete disaster, and the other drivers were happy to point this out and again criticize the FIA. The Australian Grand Prix winner, Max Verstappen, claimed that the red flag decisions made the race a bit of a mess and directly caused the collisions at the final standing restart. At the upcoming event, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in late April, Verstappen said the drivers will discuss the decision to raise the second red flag with the FIA. Of course, very happy to win the race, but I think the race itself towards the end was a bit of a mess with all the calls, Verstappen said. I don't think we needed that second red flag. I think that could have been done with a virtual safety car or a safety car at worst. We'll talk about it. I think it left a lot of drivers confused about why we needed a red flag. We'll talk in Baku. Verstappen thinks the standing restart and red flagging of the race, similar to the late surge at the 2021 Azerbaijan Grand Prix following Verstappen's tire failure there, created needless confusion at the finish line. I just didn't understand why we needed a red flag, he continued. I think if we would have had a safety car and then just have a normal rolling start, we wouldn't have had all these shunts. And then you have a normal finish, so they created the problems themselves. Fernando Alonso, who came in third, was surprised by the red flags used throughout the entire race, not just the second. The first red flag was raised in response to an accident involving Alex Albon in turn 6, while the third and final red flag was raised in response to many collisions on the penultimate lap restart. I was surprised with all the red flags, to be honest. Alonso said, the first one I think was a Williams in turn 6, but we went through there one lap I think behind the safety car, and yeah, it was a bit of gravel, but nothing really too bad on track. But we never know if the car was going on the track itself, so apparently maybe one barrier was not properly fit there, so I think the FIA has more information than us. So if there is a red flag, it has to be for that reason. We will ask probably in Baku what was the reason for the second. I know there was a piece of tire debris in the straight, but the car itself, it was like in the inside of turn 4, so felt safe there, and the safety car is for those kind of reasons. For us, maybe it was a different opinion, but as I said, the FIA are the only ones that have all the cards in the table. So on those kinds of situations, we trust them and we try to keep on going. George Russell, the head of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, was not pleased with the initial red flag for Albon's incident either. He paid a heavy price for it because he pitted during the first safety car while in the lead and dropped to 6th. But he also thought it was an example of a pattern of pointless race interruptions. I thought the red flag was totally unnecessary, Russell said when asked. There was obviously quite a lot of gravel on the track on the racing line. We've seen it far worse in the past. It was reminiscent of the decision last week in Saudi when the safety car came out when the car was totally off the track. I don't really know what's going on with some of the decisions at the moment. We're all trying to work together with the FIA to improve things, but it's seemingly a bit of a challenge. During the following race weekend at the end of the month, the drivers are anticipated to speak with the FIA management. What do you think about the race? Were the red flags required? Is Sainz's punishment acceptable? And what about Niels Wittich, the race director? Will he be able to keep his job for the rest of the season? Comment here with your opinions on the Australian Grand Prix. We appreciate you watching today's video and hope to see you in the following one.